Cool. All right. This is going to come into this one. All right, I think this is working. All right. What's up, everybody? I think this is working. You gotta hang in with me. I am very much a newbie. It's working. I'm live. Cool. All right. What's up, everybody? It's Andrew because football. Thanks for checking in if you're checking in. And yeah, pretty cool. I just finished recording a little bit of a video, and I want to share some more about it because it's pretty cool. So basically, Racing Club of Argentina just won their first continental title in 57 years. They won the Copa Sudamericana against Cruzeiro of Brazil. So pretty cool thing that they finally did it, you know, the first in a generation or so that they've won that. So I am trying to, okay. Yeah, I don't need that part. That's all right. Okay, thanks. Yeah, we're figuring everything out here on the fly. And I'm going to bring this guy. All right, awesome. So you can see me. Cool. And then I'm going to move this one over for you guys so we can see much better because we're going to be on the Wikipedia for a little bit. So yeah, I was watching really awesome video, which I'm not going to show it yet. You guys can see it in the YouTube video I'm putting out in a couple days, but basically was watching video of the Racing fans in the stadium in Paraguay before their match, before the final. Honestly, in comparison to what the semifinal looked like, which looked like Star Wars on Earth, if you just type in Racing semifinal Copa Sudamericana, literally looks like shooting bottle rockets, flares, like, and it's incredible. Got to do a video on that too. But reminded me of this really epic match that I had learned about when I was in Argentina. Probably still I don't know. I'd be curious to hear what Racing fans say. Potentially the most important accomplishment of that club, becoming the first ever Argentine team champion of the world before the Argentine national team won a World Cup, before any other Argentine clubs had won anything close to it. And it was this 1967 Intercontinental Cup, which was a football tie. You can see it's held over 3 legs. Traditionally, it was 2 legs or 2 matches between the winners of the European Cup, what we now know as the Champions League of Europe, versus the winner of the Copa Libertadores. The Liberators Cup still is the same name, but is the top tier, the South American equivalent of Champions League. So for this year, 2024, Copa Sudamericana that Racing won, it's the second tier, South America's version of the Europa League. So that second tier, still an incredible achievement and something that was celebrated throughout the streets of Buenos Aires for days on end, specifically in their neighborhood and in the blue side of their neighborhood, not in their rivals Independiente's red side. They haven't had something to celebrate in quite a while either. But got me thinking about this 1967 final that I'd read about. So you had Celtic, who I believe this was the Celtic team that was called the Lisbon Lions at the time, because they basically they won it in Lisbon. Let me double check that. Let's see. All right, we've got the first. Let's go to the final. Yep, it was at the Estadio Nacional in Lisbon. All right, where they won it. Right here, Estadio Nacional in Lisbon. All right, and they won here. It was Archie Gamble, and I don't know who the Chalmers guy was, but they beat Inter Milan, who had won it 2 of the previous years. So, you know, one of the best in the world. Steve Chalmers, second place for the Golden Boot. But yeah, the Celtic team won it. So the Lisbon Lions, because they won it in Lisbon. the majority of this Celtic team was from Glasgow. It was from the city that they were from, not from other parts of Europe. Like at the time, even AC Milan, your AC Milans would have had some guys probably from Argentina who were naturalized, guys from all over the world. At this time, Real Madrid had the likes of like Di Stefano, who was Argentine. They had Puskas, right? Like they had assembled like a global team. So even back in the 50s, some of these heavy hitters, it wasn't as common, but certainly these club teams did have players from all different countries and assembled the best of the best. In this case here, we can see Jockstein and his team received acclaim after the match, given the nickname Lisbon Lions. Greatest side in the club's history. They were the first British team to win the European Cup and the first team from Northern Europe. I think they were only like the third European team to win it. First was Real Madrid. Then Peñarol of Uruguay won it. Let's go check out our European Cup winners for a second. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. All right, cool. So we can see first one, 1960, was Real Madrid over Peñarol of Uruguay. Then Peñarol won it the next year over Benfica. Santos beat Benfica. Santos beat Milan. This is the Santos of you-know-who, I'm pretty sure. Pelé, let's double check that. Yeah, Pelé with 2 goals in the first leg. Trapattoni, Giovanni Trapattoni, who later was a manager. Some of our 90s kids will recognize him and older. Let's see. Yeah, so Pelé won that one. And then in the return leg in the Maracanã, Pepe, not Pelé, had 2. Almir and Lima with the goal. So so Santos won it 2 years in a row as well. But what we're going to talk about is 1967 Racing Club against Celtic. So if you want a really good account of this, I recommend, I could probably just find some better articles than this one right now, to be fair. But I want this to just be an introduction for you to what is probably one of the most notorious football matches of all time, and certainly one of the most notorious that you may not have heard of. Outside of Racing fans, Celtic fans, it's kind of gone a little bit to the wayside. I didn't learn about it till I went to Argentina. I remember the first time I kind of got a glimpse of the significance of Racing. I was speaking with a man it was in Buenos Aires. It was at the club Excursionistas, who's like a 3rd division club, 4th division, but really cool stadium. If you're in Buenos Aires, you should check out, and usually you can just enter. But I was there visiting it and met a man and started talking to him, and he had some mate, so we were like sharing mate all together with a couple other people. It was really cool. They just welcomed me, started chatting. I understood 20% of what this man was saying, like really difficult. And I'd been like in Argentina for a month or so I was kind of warmed up. Hardly understood a thing, but great guy. He's in the 70s. I think his grandson was training at the time in the youth team, so he was there at the club. Or he just had nothing better to do, so he was just hanging out at the club, whatever. But he's originally from Uruguay, from Montevideo, which of course has Peñarol as, I'm going to insult the Nacional fans, but Peñarol, we saw them on that list of winners. Like they, in their own right, were on a global stage and throughout South America as well. And back in the day, Uruguay winning the first ever World Cup, all that storied history. But I thought because of that, I thought it was pretty interesting that this man, of the 20% of our conversation that I did understand, he mentioned this final, he mentioned this Racing team of 1967 beating Celtic. And I think the significance to him, although he was from Montevideo, Uruguay, he told me he'd been living in Buenos Aires for decades. I think the significance was that the 3rd leg, the deciding match in this 1967 Intercontinental Cup, was played in Montevideo as like a neutral venue. So I think that was a bit of the significance to him. And the fact that he's from Uruguay, and if you know anything about South American football, and especially the Argentina-Uruguay rivalry, like they don't give each other credit for anything. They're not really going to like be able to put themselves in a neutral headspace, the majority. Some of you may be somewhat logical when it comes to football, or let's not say logical, but reasonable, but like they're not going to go out of their way to give credit or praise or sometimes even acknowledge the legitimacy of successes of other clubs and teams, and especially not when it comes to the specific Argentina-Uruguay football feud. And so I thought the fact that he was from Uruguay. Probably other people share the sentiment that this Racing team meant a lot at the time, even though Peñarol had won the cup a few years before. So it wasn't like the first time South America had won this title, but certainly was influential with Racing being the first Argentine. A little bit of context as well. This Intercontinental Cup eventually became the FIFA Club World Cup that we've known of in recent years, of like 8 participating teams, a small little tournament, usually around Christmas time, New Year's, and December, played somewhere pretty random, and you get this like great mix of teams because you'll have the local host country's team who's like a bunch of, nobodies, right? Like I think it was one in Morocco, it might have been years ago, where Ronaldinho was playing for Gremio towards the end of his career, and like after the match, how players swap shirts? All right, this was like not, and it's usually like, oh yeah, like you and me, it's consensual. It's like, yeah, I'll swap shirts with you, blah, blah, blah. This was like the Moroccan players, I want to say it was Raja, it could have been Widad, I don't remember, coming over to Ronaldinho and just like literally disrobing him. Like he's just standing there, and then guys are taking his shirt. Literally, like I would say, I think they took his shorts. Like I think he was in his underwear on the field. They're untying his shoes, like just to get something, because he was so larger than life, and they wanted something of that experience of not only playing against him, but like an actual souvenir. So anyway, that's what we know this FIFA Club World Cup as. Hardly a blip on the calendar. It's going to end up probably being the South American team against the European. And it's going to be the European team that's going to win it, because I don't think it's been since the 2000s when Boca won it that a non-European team has won the Club World Cup. Obviously now we know that FIFA has these really ridiculous plans to expand the FIFA Club World Cup to like 30 teams. They want to do it for a month next summer in the U.S. For me, it's a bit ridiculous, and on top of the already congested schedule, it is what it is. I do see the appeal of like bringing together more teams from around the world to kind of make some of those connections and memories and histories like among powerful clubs. Or like imagine like, in Africa, like a TP Mazembe, right, of Congo, I believe, or like, I don't know, Kaiser Chiefs of South Africa playing against Boca Juniors, playing against maybe Racing, gets a qualification at this point, playing against your River Plates. Then you have like Al Nassr with Ronaldo and Al Hilal with Neymar, and then like the Urawa Red Diamonds, or I think Vissel Kobe just won the Japanese league, so maybe they get in playing against the LA Galaxy. Like, so you have all these kind of random mix, and then they're playing against Real Madrid, Man City, whoever, right? Bayern. Like, so you get more of these cool stories that we don't get to see, but I still think it's a little bit wild, and I'm not really a fan of FIFA doing this at this point. But we'll see what happens with it. It seems to be a shambles. So anyway, the Intercontinental Cup is the precursor to the FIFA Club World Cup, but at the time they only did it between the champions of UEFA and CONMEBOL, so between Europe and South America. Just a quick scan, don't even read it, just see what keywords come up here, all right? Fouling, spitting, acrimonious, badly dazed, object thrown, 6 players sent off, game was a shambles, all right? So basically the story, as I've read it and I've seen it in English language media for the most part, is that even in Glasgow in the first leg, Racing decided to come with a very, you could call it, if you want to be polite, a very pragmatic, a very cunning way of competing that was not limited just to their footballing ability, although obviously they had a lot of incredible footballers at the time, but it was a bit more than that. So it was when the refs weren't looking, your elbows, your punches, grabbing at certain sensitive places that would hurt. Certainly if they didn't just hurt, it would distract you from a match. Then again, from the English language media, the Celtic players would defend themselves and say, we're just trying to play football, blah, blah, blah. But they gave as they were getting. You could say that maybe Racing threw the first stone, but then Celtic certainly piled it on in return. And so, yeah, pretty incredible. So the first match, Celtic wins it 1-0 in Glasgow, all right, in Glasgow, in Scotland. They take a 20-hour flight, 20-hour journey, all the way down to the bottom of the world, to Buenos Aires. Racing wins that second leg 2-1, although we can see there's an object thrown from the crowd before the start of the match. The second leg is really when it starts to pop off. The first leg was like fair enough, was very, very hectic here. Let's go. Started the match on the attack. 8 minutes, Racing Club defender Alfio Basile, right? Big name, fouled Jimmy Johnson as he ran in on goal. Got a free kick. So he was getting kicked and fouled. Clear the Argentinians had set up to play for a draw, away from home in that first leg. Incessant, cynical fouling and spitting. And Celtic struggled to play. Obviously, if you haven't really been prepared to face that type of play from an opponent, it's going to affect you mentally. So this is a nice little anecdote. Jimmy Johnstone, who was like arguably the star of the Celtic team, and I say that because he's the one of the few names that I recognize. He returned to the dressing room with his hair soaked with the spit of his opponents. What an image. What an image that is. Soaked with it. Could you imagine how much spit that is? That's a lot of liquid. So pretty wild. Pretty wild. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe the Racing players would just say, we were thinking of the asado. We were salivating. We were thinking of that asado and the choripan and milanesa after the match, and that's why that was the case. So, yeah, so that's pretty disgusting, but pretty amazing. We don't get that in football these days. The polished modern football is so soft, you don't see guys spitting anymore. This is like what I think of with this match and this whole so that's the first that's in Scotland. You would think Racing maybe a little bit more on better behavior because they're away and obviously the crowd would be against them. We got the atmosphere here from L'Equipe of France, described the game as incredible, noted the match was marred by too many fouls. Spanish La Marca from Spain praised Racing's defense and their success in stifling their play. So that's the review of the first match, 1-0. Okay, Billy McNeil here scoring. If we look at the teams, again, I'm not a historian and I'm from America, so I've been at I'm from the United States, so I've been at a disadvantage for a lot of football history and had to try and seek it out. But names that I recognize, obviously the manager, Joxine, who was a big mentor of Ferguson, of Sir Alex, a big influence on him, obviously being Scottish as well. Jimmy Johnstone, I know that name. The Gemmell name sounds familiar. William Wallace's great-grandson. So that's all I know for the hoops. For the Argentina one, just from reading a bit, and Machio, that name I know. Why do I know that? I know that name. I know Cardenas. He was a renowned forward at the time, played for a number of clubs in Mexico. Let me see. Cardenas. He's from Santiago del Estero, which is more in the north of Argentina, where you don't typically get a lot of players from that area. Let's see, he won Intercontinental Libertadores with them. Not too much. So I don't see any stats. He held the record of the youngest player to score in the Copa Libertadores for almost 60 years. He was 16 years old. Wow. Know how I mentioned before, players going international. So here in the 70s, he eventually went to Mexico for 5 years. Spent a year on loan with Nueva Chicago. I feel like there is a story from that book, from Angel with Dirty Faces by Jonathan Wilson. I feel like there's a story about him in there that I'm forgetting, or I read that somewhere. Machio. All right, so here's an interesting take here. At international level, he represented both Argentina, winning the 57 Copa America, and the Italy national team, taking part in the 62 World Cup. I still don't know the details about how this was allowed. Obviously, FIFA has updated their rules regarding this, because nowadays you can see players who they're allowed to play at youth international level for a certain country, and then they're allowed to switch and play for a different full national team. But it's some rule with the number of caps, and that's basically, I think, the outline as I understand it. But that was not the case back in the day, because there were a lot of Argentine-born players who then got recruited by Italy to play in various World Cups. I think there was, I'm going to blank on his name, but there was a guy who played for both Argentina and Italy. I think he was the captain of each, but this is like for the 30 and 34, or like the 34, 38 World Cup. Imagine playing for two different countries. So it's a different world for sure. Mascio he's the playmaker of that Racing team. Won the Copa Libertadores and the Intercontinental. Legendary player in the history of the club. Started at Quilmes. He was from Avellaneda, like from the neighborhood that Racing is from. Started at Quilmes, then to Racing, Bologna, Atalanta, Inter, Fiorentina, and then back to Racing. So he's part of that famous 57 Copa America winning team of Argentina. There's so it's Angel, la cara sucios, las cara sucios, the dirty faces, or in English, angels with dirty faces. That like amazing front line with Sivori and Angelillo. So, yeah, the trio of death they were known as. We had Messi, Suarez, Neymar, MSN, but they didn't call them the trio of death. So these guys were good to get a nickname like that. So he was a legendary player who was playing with this Racing team. Yeah, a couple of them were banned from the Argentines. I don't remember the story for that. I think it may have been because they went abroad to be paid professionally, and so they were banned. Yeah, let's see. He moved to Bologna 57. So that means if he was banned in 58 by the Argentine national team, that it was, I think, because they went over and they were getting paid. So I think if they left Argentina, they weren't allowed to. This was a time, again, this is something that Wilson touches on a lot in his book, so I'm getting this from him, again, from the English language media, because my Spanish is not really up to par to be reading and learning a lot beyond Instagram when it comes to Spanish media and knowledge. So at this time, with the president of Argentina at the time, Perón, he was leveraging the popular passion for football and the craze for football. He was leveraging that to uphold the government. They may have been failing in other areas of governance of the country, but they were using football and investing. Like, a lot of stadiums were built at that time. For Racing, for example, the official name of their stadium is Estadio Presidente Perón, like the stadium of the president, because I believe that the government they were pouring a lot of investment into professional football. You guys still with me? I think we lost Wi-Fi a little bit. Let's see, are we back? All right, we're back now. Sorry, we lost you guys.